Adam, it's Nebraska week, and I think Buff fans have been waiting for this game. I don't know when it was scheduled, like 6, 7 years ago. They've been waiting for it about that long. The anticipation is heightened, not only with Coach Prime being here all offseason, but with the way they won that game last week. The anticipation is off the charts. Have we covered a game recently that's been this anticipated?
Maybe the home finale against Utah in 2016 would come somewhat close because you're talking about, having a chance to win a division championship, but
I think
probably not overall, especially from a national scale.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Not a national scale, certainly. I think the Nebraska game in 2019 with Mel Tucker. Yeah, that one was pretty highly anticipated because there was so much excitement for Mel Tucker.
Jay Johnson, the stones on him to call that flea flicker. To this day, that's top 5 for me covering this team in terms of plays that you remember and will always remember.
Yeah, in fact, I leaned over to you during the TCU game at one point to see you was backed up and had a play, and I said, "What? They're not confident enough to call a flea flicker here." So that was one of the greatest play calls that we've seen in our time covering this
Only
game.
because it worked,
right? Only because it worked. Yeah, but it was a phenomenal play. KD Nixon, had some big plays for this team, but none bigger than that one.
Yeah, that was a big day. And how many days now has it been since Nebraska beat this team? I've seen that countdown a few times on Twitter. It's been a really long time because obviously since they both left the Big 12, Colorado's won both of those matchups. And also I think the fact that Colorado has just not developed a rival with any other school adds to this, right? Because you haven't had those feelings of animosity as a Colorado fan. Yeah, maybe you can get up for USC because you've never beat them before, but there's not that history with those teams that they tried to manufacture that with. I don't think there's more bad blood between Colorado and Utah than there was the day both those teams joined the Pac-12 together. So that's a little part of it too, is just having that rivalry feeling, which you don't get here often at Folsom Field.
Yeah, you don't get it very often. There's a few, I would even say more than Utah. Maybe you feel it sometimes with ASU or UCLA. Fans obviously want to beat USC, but you can't have a rivalry in football if you don't beat a team. So, but yeah, you almost feel it with some of those other teams more so than Utah. There's nothing like Nebraska. It's just a different week, and that's why. And because of the fact they haven't played very much in recent years, I think that heightens it as well.
I'm curious to talk to some of the beat writers for Nebraska too. Is this viewed any differently by Nebraska fans back than when it used to? Because you asked 10 Nebraska fans back in the late 90s, is Colorado a true rival? And you're probably only going to get 4 or 5 that would admit out of that 10 that it is a rivalry. So it wasn't embraced on their end the way that it was on Colorado's end, which makes sense. It was Bill McCartney that made this the red letter game, I think, a little over 40 years ago. And so it makes sense that Colorado's going to embrace it a little bit more. But I'm curious because Colorado has won the last 2. Has that changed a little bit? What do Nebraska folks think about it? Because, now, their backs are against the wall pretty quick here early in the season.
Yeah, they're 0-1. Obviously, didn't look very good against Minnesota. They've had a rivalry with Iowa. I don't know how intense that one is, but they seem like they've had more of a rivalry in their conference than Colorado has. But yeah, this one's going to be interesting because because the way Nebraska played, the way CU played in the opening week, all of a sudden that spread has gone from Nebraska being like a 7 or 8 point favorite to Colorado being a 3 or 4 point favorite. I'm not sure I've ever seen a spread change that much in 1 week. Have you?
It's been a while, and it feels like it should have moved even more than it did based on the opening weekend results. So I would imagine that it probably creeps a little bit more towards 6, 6.5, maybe even 7 by the time kickoff comes, because I think there's going to be a lot of people that want to root for Colorado now and have a little action on the game as well.
Yeah. I think my favorite quote of the week so far is Jimmy Horn was asked, "Do you have a reason to hate Nebraska?" And he goes, "No, but I hate them." These guys, you got to love Deion Sanders that he's training these guys. Hey, we're supposed to hate Nebraska, so we're going to hate Nebraska. And they don't need a reason, but other than their reason is they play for Colorado, so we're going to hate Nebraska.
And Brian Cabral is still around here a little bit. I will always remember a press conference when he was the interim head coach here after Dan Hawkins got fired. Yeah. And on Nebraska week, a colleague of ours that wrote for the Denver Post at the time showed up in a red shirt, bright red shirt. And Brian Cabral, if the cameras weren't there, would have choked him out. I'm pretty certain of it. He was angry and just kind of veered at him the entire time throughout that press conference. So it's cool to see this staff embrace it because – I think that's one of the things that's impressed me about Coach Prime and the staff is that he gets it. Yeah. And yes, he's changing a lot of things around here, but he still wants to keep the history part of it, and so that's very commendable.
He even said in the press conference, he was asked if any alums are going to be here. He said, "I'm not really sure, but if they are, you know where to find me. We're going to take care of you." And so he definitely is embracing that history. This is a big part of it, but that history doesn't matter on Saturday. It's about this team versus Nebraska's team, and based on what we saw in Week 1, you think, well, Colorado's going to win this football game, but what can Colorado? I mean, what does Colorado have to do really to kind of win this football game?
Well, Nebraska has a good defense. You got to respect that fact. And Jeff Sims is a dual threat quarterback, and I know folks out there hate it when I bring up stuff from the past, but there's a little bit of trauma covering this program when it comes to dual threat quarterbacks on other teams. They've just historically killed CU over and over again. But he threw some bad picks, Sims did, in that season opener. So I think the edge goes to Colorado in a lot of spots, but I don't think it's going to turn into a shootout the way we saw it turn out down in Fort Worth.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be that high scoring, but Colorado's got to play better defense. That's for sure. Offensively, I don't expect them to get 45 points, but you certainly can't get gashed with the run like they did against TCU. You've got to keep them well below that 500 yards, 42 points. They got to keep them under 30, I think.
And again, going back to the fact that Nebraska has a really solid defense, I am curious though, how do they look late in this football game? Nebraska's offensive coordinator thinks a huddle is the heartbeat of an offense, which is a very 1950s type of mentality. So the Nebraska defense is not going against high tempo in practice. Does that factor in, especially playing here at altitude where Colorado actually has an effective up-tempo offense, which we just haven't really seen around here? So I am curious to see, does Nebraska wear down late in the game? Because I think that could be another factor as well.
I think it could also be a factor on Colorado's defense that, TCU went fast and Colorado's used to seeing it fast. We've had defenders say, hey, we go so fast in practice that when we get to games, it might actually be too slow for us and, slow us down. They might actually have an advantage being able to go a little slower on defense and maybe change some personnel at times or, think about what's going on in the play. That might benefit their defense as well. So I give the edge to Colorado in a lot of ways, but I think the key this week is their defense has to play better. I'm not really worried after last week about Colorado's offense scoring points, but their defense has got to play better.
When you just look at the average yards per rush on offense for Colorado from the opener and the average yards with their rush defense, that's a number that's going to have to change a little bit as the season goes on. Shedeur Sanders is an incredible talent. I think he might stay in this Heisman discussion for a very long time, but I don't know if you can expect 510 yards out of him. Maybe you can.
Right.
Maybe you can. But you don't want to have to put that pressure necessarily on your defense week after, or, on your offense week after week to have to score that many points. So I don't know. Yeah, I think that defensively stopping the run is going to have to be better, but it could potentially be an issue with this football team throughout the season, and maybe they'll just find a way to score more points.
Right. You also hope that the special teams is a cleaner operation than it was last week. Obviously, Coach Prime called it horrendous at times, but missed field goal or a blocked field goal, and then you give up a big kickoff return, not for a touchdown, but it set up a touchdown. So you need that to be cleaner. So prediction time. What do you think this week?
I think that there's going to be less possessions in this game, so I'm going to go lower scoring, again, respecting Nebraska's defense. They've got some experienced talent back on that side of the ball. I just don't think Nebraska's going to be able to keep up offensively in this football game, and I think the defense for the Cornhuskers will wear down as the game goes on, and I see Colorado winning this game by a couple touchdowns. Give me Colorado winning it 31-17.
Okay. I'm thinking right along the same things. My score was 31-23 in my head. So I'm going to go with that. I think that CU's defense is still going to give up some yards, but maybe to the point that they give up more field goals than touchdowns in this one, and Nebraska's going to have to settle for that. But I think it's going to be a fairly competitive game throughout, but I think it's one of those ones that throughout most of the day, Colorado's got it. Like, they got the edge. They just got to maintain it throughout the day. And so I think the Buffs go to 2-0.
This place is going to be buzzing in a couple of days. I'm really anxious to see what this all looks like. And I thought it was great. I know people that came out here in the cold weather for the spring game wanted to see Ralphie run, but I thought it was perfect that Coach Prime's first run behind Ralphie is going to come when they open 100th season at Folsom Field against Nebraska.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And, it's big noon kickoff. With the start time, though, at 10 a.m., I'm not even sure that the second half kickoff will be afternoon. It'll be probably both of them before noon. So it's early. I know we're going to get up and very early, probably have some breakfast burritos before we get here. But it's going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait for this one.
Ralphie, set your alarm. You got to be here early on Saturday.
We'll see you guys on Saturday.